All right, I'm here to show you how to do Workout Wednesday, week 14 for 2022. This one is a fun challenge. You need to get the data from um, real world fake data from Mark Bradburn, and it's the human resources data set. And I'm already connected to it, as you can see here. Before we get going too far, I need to do a couple of things. Number one is there's a whole bunch of null rows in it. So I'm going to make an extract. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to add a filter on ID here. And what I want to do is use a wildcard. Actually, I'm just going to use a condition. And I'm just going to say not is null ID. That's all I need here. And this is just going to return all my good values. I'm going to hit OK here. That gives me a subset of my data where there's no nulls. And then I have two columns in here. I have hire date and term date. If the term date's null, that means they have not left yet. And the hire date is the date they were hired. I'm going to take these two columns. I'm going to right click and I'm going to pivot them. So now we have pivot names, term date, hire date rolling through here, as well as a field that is this pivot field values, which I'm just going to double click and change to date because that's our date. And then this is, this is going to be hire term. It's going to be hire date or term date, depending on that. And it's hire space date and term date. So when I'm building these calculations, and you'll see as well, this gives me 2 rows per employee per unique ID. And that's going to be super important going forward. So yep, I'm just going to save this and get myself an extract. From here, let's start building the visualization so that we can sort of see what it's supposed to look like. And I'm going to go find date wherever I've created that field. There it is. I actually need to change the type on it to a date. And part of the rules here is basically to say, if they're termed, make sure they count for the next month starting value. That's the hard part here. So our calculation, the big calculation that we're going to do in this problem, in this challenge, is just to say, all right, if the pivot field name, which is hire term, is equal to hire date, then what we want to return is the date trunk of the month of that date. And then if it's not, so it's a term, then we're going to do date add, and we're going to add a month of one value from the date trunk of the month. So this is just going to basically give it to the first of the next month for the counts. Date trunk date. So that is our calculation here. And this is, I'm going to call it something like first full month for this term date. So that's going to roll it through to the next. So now we have our first full month. Let's just bring this out on columns. We're going to change this to be a discrete month by here. And we're also, let's keep it on year, and we'll actually just do it the old-fashioned way, expand this out and remove. Now what we want to do is count all the hire dates positive and the term dates negative, because we're going to lose those values. So we're just going to create another calculated field, and we're just going to call it headcount. And we'll say if, actually just use case for our hire term when hire date, then 1 when term date, then -1. And of course, we couldn't just end it blank like this. We'd actually have to finish this up. So we'll just also say end. So there it is. There's our head count. I'm going to hit OK on head count. Now I can bring this out on text. You'll see I have those negative values showing up. This is perfect. Now let's just remove hire term from rows. Boom. Now we've got these values sort of aggregating over time. From here, we just need to add date and choose years here as a filter type. So the date is that field that we just built. And we're going to choose basically 2000 through 2021. And I'm going to hit OK. And that's going to return all these dates. Now I'm going to take all these values up through basically 2018, so 2017 and back, right click and hide those values. So I've now got these values that are rolling through. As you can see, the deltas change over time. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to double click and we're going to just create a nice little table calculation here, a running sum of that sum of headcount. And that's going to be our first value here. It looks like it's just a little bit off in terms of the values that I'm shooting for. I can go troubleshoot that in a few minutes. It's probably due to some null values that I've got in there, but I can take this and put this on rows here and we can sort of see that the values are increasing over time. Oh, I also don't need all of these dates into 2021. I actually only need just 1 month in. So I'll go and update that. There we go. So we just got that one next month of data coming through here. And I might just double check one of my calcs, but this is more or less the directionally correct solution for this week's challenge. I'm just going to take year, by the way, I'm going to put this on color so that we can sort of see the visualization that I'm looking to put together. I also have this as a continuous axis, and we changed the labels, by the way, later on. You can sort of see these totals rolling through, and we need to, as a result of this change, also edit our table calculation. And this sometimes is a little bit of a tricky table calculation for a lot of people because it requires us to sort of know a few tricks about how to calculate these. First, we're going to choose specific dimensions. We're going to choose both year and month. We also need to switch the order of these. It's just as important because we want to do this calculation and sort of restart the value. Well, make sure that we're doing it first at the year and then rolling through on month. And now we'll see that that calculation looks a little bit easier. If we look at the solution, this axis does not include 0, so it's independent. So I'm going to do that as well. And then let's just add some labels in there. So showing my mark labels. Again, I'm off by a couple counts. I'm probably going to come back to that. I want to get the calculations done first. So this calculation we're going to save off. And I'm just going to call it official headcount. So there it is, first calculation created. I'm going to create another calculated field here called annual change. So it's just year over year change of those calculations. And annual change is going to apply a couple of table calculations. And the easiest way to do this is just to take an existing calculation like official headcount. I'm just going to double click and type that in there. And I'm going to also, again, part of the challenge here is we have to apply that same logic that we just did. But we're going to calculate the percent change. So to do this, I'm going to create a new calculated field, and we're going to use the lookup function. So we're going to just say, in the numerator, let's look up that official head count, and we're going to go back 0 values, and we're going to subtract this same calculation. So if it's this value, we want to then essentially go back year over year. We want to go back minus 12 values. And then we're going to divide that by the current value in this case. So we're going to then take this little chunk, place this here, hit apply. This is, by the way, we're going to call this our annual change. Now we've got our annual change. We're just going to add this out here as well onto text. You'll see it's not returning anything. We need to edit our table calculation once again. We're going to choose specific dimensions. Once again, make sure our selection is in the correct order for both of these, year, month. is how we've got that sort of set up. If we, I'm just double checking my own calculations here. Year and month for annual change, and official, same thing. So now we've got these percentages. The one thing I want to do on these axes, by the way, is just right click and edit the axis. And I'm once again going to uncheck that, and I could just say format this to be a percentage to make my life a little bit easier here. So numbers, percentage, take out a value. And I can see those percents rolling through now. Again, I've got to come back and look at how my first full month calculation is being calculated. I have a feeling I might have made a mistake because I'm off by tens of numbers, not even real small. So then the last calculation is this net rolling 12 calculation. So what does the change look like every over a series of rolling 12 months? And this one, again, seems intimidating once again, but it's really not too bad when we think about it, because basically we're calculating the head count change over time. So right now, if we're pretending it's January and we're looking back 12, we want to count basically the last 12 months and look at the actual change in headcount over time. And to do so, we just need to take the existing sort of official headcount calculation, the underlying calc that we've sort of put in there, which is headcount, and do a lookup of the official headcount now versus 12 months ago. So we can kind of do that. I'm just going to create a new calculated field and say annual change. Sorry, I'm going to say lookup official headcount 0. I don't really need to put that in, but I like to just for consistency. And lookup official headcount minus 12. So that's just going to calculate the current value minus the existing value, and that's going to give me the rolling 12 month change. And if I put this on text, again, I'm not too worried. I just need to edit my table calculation and make sure I've got it set up correctly. So year, month on official headcount. I'm going to do the same thing here, flip these, and we've got some proper calculations. I just, again, for the sake of my axes, to be able to differentiate these values, I'm going to edit the axis. And those are my calculations for this challenge. I could apply some formatting and sort of finalize the view. I think the one cool thing I do want to point out here is on this axis, if I do formatting on it, you'll see that it says dates, but my dates axis, it needs some actual formatting. So right now it's using automatic. I'm going to just choose abbreviation. You'll notice that it changed those labels in there. I wish it didn't show December and January at the end here, but that's just part of what we're dealing with. Anyway, I'm just going to come back and check my first full month calculation to make sure that I haven't messed anything up, because if there's anywhere where I probably have made a mistake, it's in here. So I'm just going to check again my first full month calculation and double check it. And let's see, there we go, perfect. Those are the values I'm shooting for in here. So after making just a subtle change, we now see the correct values rolling through onto this visualization. Anyway, this is Workout Wednesday 2022, week 14. I'm Luke, and yeah, this was a tricky one nonetheless. So thanks again for hanging out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.